Hi, it's Mary. Welcome to Cozy Saturday, where I review a new cozy mystery book universe that I've delved into. And typically, what happens is I'm going to tell you about it. I'm going to give a non-spoilery review, the rating, and then the spoiler warning, and get a little bit more in depth. So today's cozy mystery is A Skeleton Haunts a House by Leigh Perry. And it is the third book in the series. My library didn't have the first one, but that's fine. With cozy mysteries, you're supposed to be able to pick up kind of at any book. So today, instead of giving like my own summary, I'm actually going to read the synopsis from Goodreads because it ties into my review. Sid the skeleton bones up on clues to solve a haunted house homicide in this mystery from the author of The Skeleton Takes a Bow, which I'm assuming is either the first or the second book. What holiday could bring more warmth to a skeleton's chest cavity than Halloween? And when you're a living skeleton who's not supposed to be seen outside the house, it's a welcome chance to get some fresh air and rub bony elbows with people. Ooh. That's why Sid doesn't mind wearing a full-body dog suit and going as Scooby-Doo along with Georgia Thackeray's Velma to the Halloween Howl. Sid can't wait to go to the haunted house, but he gets rattled for real when a genuine dead body is discovered. Trapped inside as the police quickly seal off the crime scene, Sid makes no bones about dropping off the dog's suit and posing as an actual skeleton. This murder is a skull scratcher. But as long as Sid is on the inside, he may as well case the joint to figure out who's used the cover of darkness to commit the perfect crime. So I was excited going into the book. I was like, okay, it sounds like we're going into the point of view of the skeleton, who for some reason is alive, but then I started the book and it wasn't. Also, the mystery is nothing like what the synopsis is talking about. I figured it's the way that it to me sounded was like, oh, they're at a haunted house. There's a body. They have a limited amount of time in that haunted house to figure out this mystery. It did not turn out that way at all. And the reason why I'm not considering that a spoiler is because the point of view is actually Georgia Thackeray's. And I understand why the author would want to use Georgia as the point of view instead of Sid, but you get that right off in the first few pages of the book. So that in itself is not a spoiler. Georgia Thackeray is definitely more in line with our typical cozy mystery protagonist. From what I can gather, because this is the third book, she's living in her parents' home while they're on a sabbatical, and she's living there with Sid and her daughter. And she's had a tough time with various different jobs and keeping a stable income as well as being a single parent. Cool. So since her parents are on sabbatical and they're both professors at this university, she is an adjunct professor. So I wonder if also it's kind of like a legacy thing. I don't think that that's usually part of a hiring process. You hear about legacies when you get into the college, not when you're teaching there, but anyway, so that is essentially our setup. From the synopsis, I found the premise really, really original. So I was a little disappointed to come into Georgia's point of view instead. But having Sid as he is still incredibly original. And I do love the nod to Scooby-Doo in that sense of this is not a human, just a human solving the mystery. But also, it gives Sid like a little bit more creativity because if it's on Halloween and people are dressed as skeletons, could he just go out as a skeleton? But, I get all made up to do a video, and Sid gets all made up to go out once a year. There are a lot of interesting different characters in the book, and I think that the introduction to them is a little bit more on the rocky end. I think there are a lot more other cozy mysteries that where you can pick up a book and go in and all these characters are introduced and it doesn't seem as rocky in comparison to this one. But I do like the dynamics that each character has with each other. In this particular book, we find that Sid is very well acquainted with George's family because he lives in that house as well. And so we get a lot of like family interactions. And this family is very much like they hold on to their habits. So the way that they communicate with each other is narrated as not very easy for everybody to understand. There is a romance within this novel as well, and I like the way that it's treated with respect to what Georgia's priorities are, which is her job, having a stable income, providing for her daughter. Any relationship that she has, has to respect those priorities first. She has a lot of very good, healthy boundaries. And so the romance is really sweet and really cute. And the romance is not Sid. I will say that she is not romancing the skeleton. Okay. I just want to get that out of the way. I think it would be weird to try to romance a skeleton. Let's just have that on record. Once I put aside the disappointment that it wasn't Sid's POV, I actually really liked the setup of the mystery. It had a lot more twists and turns than I expected. The characters also weren't given as much information, but in the world building in this particular book, you are really kind of settled with the setting of this is the haunted house. It's on the college campus, and so we get to see the surroundings of what Georgia has to work with in order to solve this mystery. It also brings to light how these characters have to do with each other. There is a lot more than one red herring, and I'm going to say I did guess. I did guess the person who did it, but I didn't guess the reason why. That ending, like, I love the ending. I wouldn't say it's like the happiest of endings, but it is kind of like a just ending. Like, okay, yeah, I think this fits. One thing that I did notice when it came to the book, though, is that it has problems with active and passive voice. This can be something that's a really big pet peeve for a lot of people. I find that the way Georgia's POV is, she talks about her day almost in a I'm writing in my journal way until she has to go and do something. And I found that kind of boring. I think that there's a lot that you can do. And given that the synopsis kind of is leading in that maybe you're in Sid's POV, maybe there could have been more done with that in terms of how you would use an active voice in the story. Overall, Sid is a really big part of the story, but I want even more of him. So that active versus passive voice thing, it really got me because there were times when it would just pull you out as a reader, and I ended up rating this book a 3 out of 5. It was good as an introduction to this series for me. I don't know if I would continue it because I want to know about the origins of Sid and I want to see more of Sid. But at the same time, I have to wonder, like, is it gonna continue? Am I gonna feel like kind of dragged along in the series if it's gonna continue sounding like a Dear Diary moment, you know? Sometimes with passive voice, you may not absolutely notice it unless you've keenly attuned yourself to that or you're looking for active versus passive voice. So I feel like for this to completely pull me out where I couldn't even like excuse it because it took such a toll on my enjoyment, was unfortunate. All right, so now that I've given you the rating, let's move into the more spoilery sections. So one of the positives that I wanted to note that is very spoilery is that Georgia does have a conversation with her daughter about bullying, but again, the way that her family kind of communicates with each other is a lot in respect to every different individuals' boundaries. So when she talks to her daughter, she does it in a careful manner that doesn't try to pry or even, you know, get under her daughter's skin or cross any unhealthy boundaries. She does it in a way that allows her daughter to open up to her, and that's one of the positive things that I noticed. And this book does have different cases of bullying, especially cyberbullying, because that kind of is where it takes place first. And I thought that was a very sweet and very modern thing to add to the book. I feel like I've seen a lot of media and like movies and things like that where people are talking about bullying, but it's done in a way that's after something terrible has happened or pushes somebody else over the edge. So I appreciated the gentle approach that was taken here. I also like that in comparison to a lot of other mysteries where people will just come up to you and talk to you, or you just have to build rapport with someone and suddenly they're telling you about their most traumatic thing in their childhood and suddenly you can solve it in the crime. This didn't quite happen that way. And so Sid and Georgia have a very, very little information to go on. And I think that that helped propel forward what are the characters going to do in order to solve the mystery. Now, what I didn't like about that was like it almost became too easy for Sid because he's at home all day. So he's like online trying to figure out all these things about the mystery, checking the victims like social media, all of that stuff. And eventually he finds a way to figure out the victim's password into their social media. That was not realistic to me. I didn't understand that at all. But again, it's a skeleton come to life finding out somebody's password, so I guess it can't really be like, oh, well, that's not realistic. But at the same time, like, don't make it too easy. Don't make it too easy because they were able to do things like Sid can detach part of his body. There are sometimes when Sid, as a spy, is like a skeleton in a bag, or sorry, a skull in a bag. And that's pretty cool. I thought there would be a little bit more footwork for Sid in that case if you're finding a way around the fact that you cannot have a skeleton out in broad daylight. Another thing that I thought was kind of unfortunate was that, because Sid is home all day, typically he has his own room and it's Georgia who approaches him to talk about things, not so much the other way around. And we're so much into Georgia's schedule and her POV. We'll get things like, I taught 3 classes and met with these many people for office hours around this time to this time. And then I texted Sid so that he would know I am on my way back. Meanwhile, overnight, Sid is like, I've compiled the report together. So then he just slips it to Georgia and she takes it, I don't know, with her morning coffee or something. Like, it's kind of like that. And I wanted Sid to be more proactive. You have a skeleton that can move around and talk and also disassemble himself. Like, this is a wonderful original thing. Please do something with it. And the third book in. Like, this is the third book. This isn't even like the first book. This is the third book. So I'm kind of wondering, like, how deep in does Sid then become a little bit more comfortable with being a more active asset in solving these crimes? Or rather, when does Georgia become a more active versus passive voice? Because that still bothers me. It is literally going to be the issue of whether or not I continue this series, because I love Sid. There's a question of his origin. I want to get into it. I want to see more of the romance. I want to see more of the family dynamics. I'm not interested in reading what is George's diary, essentially, because it's very different to be like, again, it's very different to be like, I taught 3 classes. I met some of my students for office hours. As I was leaving, a student caught me and I spent 15 minutes convincing him to let me leave and that I wouldn't be able to change his grade because he wasn't able to keep it up. Like, not that the mundane can't be interesting, but this isn't the way to do it, I guess. I feel like I'm in this book going, the way it's written, original premise, the way it's written, the original premise, the way the skeletons use, original premise. I don't. Maybe now that I've talked it out in this video, I like it a little less than I thought I did. But I'm still standing firm on that 3 out of 5, and it is a 3.0 out of 5. It doesn't go higher, it doesn't go lower. I'm sticking to it. There were a lot of little elements that I liked, but it also could have been better, which is the entire review. Oh my god. Okay. That's it for Cozy Saturday. If you've watched me this far, thank you so much, and I will see you in my next video. Bye! Oh, you're still here? If you think I'm frazzled about this cozy mystery, wait for next week. I'm livid just thinking about that book.